On August 5th, a riot erupted in Union Square in New York City on 14th Street, major hub, major subway stop there, big activity center there in Union Square. It's a park running from 14th Street to 17th Street, pretty central to the downtown Manhattan area. And so we can look at, there's a brief summary of the events from CNN. They did a little short.
Chaos broke out in New York City's Union Square on Friday after Twitch streamer Kai Cenat held a giveaway event.
So Kai Cenat is a Twitch streamer, an influencer. He was giving away PlayStation 5s. He announced, okay, I'm going to give out a bunch of PlayStation 5s in Union Square Park at a certain time. Be there. That's it. No permitting, no alerting anybody that this was going to happen so that they could make security arrangements or block off streets so that overflows didn't flood the streets and block traffic and people get hit by cars. And it just erupted into a total shit show because you had, PS5s being given away, and there's this big star who's going to be there. This guy has 20 million subscribers throughout his various social media accounts. He's got a few million on Twitch, a few million on YouTube. I'm assuming a few million more on Twitter, Instagram, all that shit. And so, it devolves into a complete shit show very, very quickly because you just had too many people in too small a space, and they're kids, right? I mean, you're young kids. Kai Cenat is 21 himself, and a lot of the people who showed up, they're teenagers, right? So what do you do when you're a teenager? Free PS5? Cool, we'll be there. And, you get a bunch of teenagers in a crowd, what do? They act out. They're teenagers, right? Not like holding it against them or anything. But it was obviously a situation that could have very easily been predicted to get out of control. Like I said, Kai Cenat himself is 21. That's basically a kid, right? As most of us would think of him as. So he's been charged with 2 counts of inciting a riot. One is a felony and one is a misdemeanor, as well as an additional misdemeanor charge of unlawful assembly, since there was no attempt at a permit or anything like that. Kai has since apologized for going about this giveaway as he did. Like I said, probably just didn't think of it. Probably think, all right, a couple hundred kids will show up. I'll give them some PlayStations. I'll take some photographs and, whatever. Like I said, he's 21, right? He probably doesn't even know what red tape you're supposed to go through to have an event like this. But fellow Twitch streamer Hassan Piker drew some attention for his take on the events of the day. So we just showed you there. Kids hanging off of cars. There were kids jumping on top of cars and kicking in windshields and, destroying all kinds of property and things like that. And a couple people did obviously get hurt, more than a couple. There were several sort of injuries. There were fights that broke out. One of the guys who got injured was a guy who owned like a newsstand. If you walk around a park in New York City, there's guys selling, magazines, newspapers, snacks, drinks, things like that. A guy got beat up trying to, fend off the crowd. And here is Hassan watching that video and reacting.
His whole kiosk was ransacked. All the ships were broken and pulled apart. Things were taken off of it. And he was saying that he was injured because he was trying to stop the kids, and they hit his head, his neck, his back. The gentleman is in his 60s. And, he was talking to EMTs that were there and talking to the police that were there, giving them a report of what happened. But, a totally just innocent victim in all of this, that he was just doing his job, going about his day, and his business got ransacked there. But from where we are here, it does that the officer circumventing them in that sense. And from my perspective, that's...
I fucking despise local media, dude. There you go. There is no better representation of how dog water local media is and how much they exacerbate.
Sorry, I gotta pause it 1 second. Was he even paying attention to what he saw? Because at first I thought, okay, this guy's just being an insensitive prick. But now you see he's eating food or whatever. Is he even paying attention? Did he even realize that he was talking about a guy who just got this shit beat out of him?
Circumventing
he's
them in
eating
that
a fucking
sense.
hot dog or something. I don't know what the hell he's eating.
I fucking despise local media, dude. There you go. There is no better representation of how dog water local media is and how much they exacerbate narratives that you see on Fox News. What role they play in the boomer reactionary pipeline.
Yeah,
local media talking about $3 worth of fucking Doritos.
Okay, that's
there was a
bankrupt
reactionary pipeline. Local media talking about $3 worth of fucking Doritos, like, you know, there was a bank run or some shit. Like,
you're not talking about $3 worth of Doritos. First of all, in terms of property damage, there was a lot more damage done than $3 worth of Doritos. That's not even the point, as far as I could see. The point is that this working guy who, you know, probably puts 16-hour days into that newsstand, got roughed up by these kids trying to protect what he uses to make a living. Like, these people,
they care so much about immigrants and non-white people. Here's an old non-white immigrant who got beat up at his business, and all of a sudden, what? He's reactionary because he has feelings about it. The news is reactionary for talking about it. And, you know, if you want to talk about standards, what if this was a MAGA rally? How would you cover that?
Right.
How would you cover it? What if it was a MAGA rally where this happened? Would you cover it that way? Would you call the news out of line for focusing on this poor immigrant who got beaten up?
And it's an especially bad look considering how rich he is, right? I mean, Hassan Piker lives in this Beverly Hills mansion. He drives a Porsche, right? He really flexes his wealth. In the screen cap that I used for this show, and I didn't even realize this until I put it in there, he has a Rolex hat on. The hat with the Rolex logo on his head.
Well, that's another thing, and this was a point that Greg Foreman, the black conservative, made. That was actually how this got on my radar. He covered it, and he said, this guy lives in a gated community in a multi-million-dollar home. What do you think he would do if this happened in his neighborhood? Do you think this is what he would say? What if they came into his garage and started fucking his shit up? What would he do? Would this be what he was saying about it? Oh man, the local news, you know, they were talking about how these kids broke in my house, and actually, you know, it was great. It was a great experience for me. I loved it.
What do you call it? The boomer something?
$3 worth of fucking Doritos.
Reactionary.
Like,
boomer reactionary.
You know, there was a bank run or some shit. Like, also want to fucking make it seem like, you know, this is a riot that was completely out of control.
I like that.
Make it seem like, you know,
look at the image
that
he's
a riot.
As he's showing the that I mean, that's very much the CNN. The protests are fiery. But
it's tragedy porn met with also like black unruly teenagers.
Well, also, look, the other thing about this is this was not a political riot. This was not like genuine unrest bubbling over where you could say, like during the George Floyd protests, I said, yeah, look, I mean, shit's gonna burn. Property is going to get damaged. So be it. In fact, there was a story, Tusker, you might remember this. I think I talked to Russell about this offline. There was that restaurant owner. I think it was in Minneapolis. He was like an immigrant restaurant owner. I think he owned an Indian restaurant or something. And it burned in the riot. And he said, it's okay, let it burn. It's only a restaurant, right? Because he understood that this was a major cultural moment and there was genuine outrage about something horrible that happened on camera for everybody to see. And I think the community actually built him a new restaurant. It was this very sort of heartwarming moment. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a fucking dumb kid not realizing what the hell he was doing. He announces this giveaway for PS5s. Look, I don't even hold it against Cenat, really. I mean, I don't take it personally against him. He doesn't know it. He's 21. Who knows what you're supposed to do when you're 21? You figure you'll bring a van full of PlayStations, give them out. What's the worst that could happen? Right, he didn't know. I'm not holding it against him. Mistake. Right, it was a stupid mistake. Stupid kids make stupid mistakes, right? It happens to everybody. But the point is, how you could sit there and say, well, they're acting like this got out of control and just dismissing the experience of this immigrant.
As you're showing the image of this being completely out of control.
This is not, and you know, look, I almost brought this up to Shama when we had her last week because we were asking her about the wisdom of, you know, riots and the efficacy of, you know, disorganized protests and things like that. And I didn't want to pull a vanguard on her and try to get her to gossip about Hassan. Hey, what did you think about what Hassan said? But she gave an answer to our general question that could very easily apply here, which is that it's not good for socialist movements to dismiss the safety concerns of working class people. Like a guy who fucking owns a newsstand, he doesn't want the newsstand getting fucked up. He can't afford to have the newsstand fucked up. If the newsstand gets fucked up and the shit gets taken or ruined, that's a huge loss for him. People don't understand what these guys go through. These street vendors
he doesn't
in New York.
necessarily have insurance for that. This guy's
Not necessarily, and even if he does,
family.
the nut that these fucking guys have to pay, the permitting fees to set up. Do you know what a hot dog vendor permit fee costs in Times Square? It's 6 figures a year. I used to have the number, but it's like 150 grand a year to set up a hot dog cart in Times Square. So you see these guys, they look like working class guys. They're handling cash all day. You think, man, these guys must be getting rich. No, they got to sell like $250,000 worth of fucking hot dogs before they see $1. That's what these guys do. If you drive through the city at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning, these poor guys are schlepping their food stands on a trailer tied to a pickup truck.
Yeah.
Then they got to get there. They got to dislodge the trailer. They got to go. They got to set the thing up. Work 14 hours a day to try and take in enough cash to meet all their, nut. And then they got to drag the fucking thing back to the apartment. I mean, you're talking about driving this shit through New York City. I mean, it is extraordinarily difficult work. When you consider the hours that these people put in, it is extraordinarily tough work for very, very low pay. And so when a bunch of kids come and they start fucking up the stand, like your fucking life flashes before your eyes because you're like, I'm going to get destroyed here. I'm going to get destroyed here. But this guy doesn't know anything about that. You think fucking Hassan Piker knows anything about what it's like to tow a fucking hot dog stand on the back of your truck and park it in the middle of the city and be out there for 12 hours in the heat or in the freezing cold or in the rain and then go home with barely enough money to get the bills paid? No.
Right, and that poor guy gets beaten up.
Right.
It's just what a disgusting little creep. I'm just amazed anybody would take that guy seriously. Like, why does he have an audience? Like, what, really? I don't even understand it. I mean, he's not the only person I don't understand, but that's a very extreme example of I don't get it. But we actually brought Tusker on here because a lot of times when I talk about things like this being very bad for the image of the left, some people think it's reactionary and we've talked a lot about what the actual communist take on this is, if I can say that. And Tusker, can you explain what the take is on this kind of an event and on rioting in general, uncontrolled rioting?
So uncontrolled rioting, while it may be warranted for the individuals engaged in the riot, they might have a reason to feel aggrieved. They might have a reason to riot. Wanton destruction and unorganized violence is very unsettling, not only to the professional managerial class and not only to the capitalist class, but it's also very looked down upon from the working class perspective. Watching cities and streets be destroyed, feeling as though it is unsafe to walk in your city, in your local community, that is very much a working class concern. That does not mean that I'm saying that every riot is a disaster, everything like that's not what I'm saying. But you have to have some amount of political organization whenever you are choosing to have that riot. So whenever you are choosing to do that, you have to have an organized demand. If you don't have an organized demand, then it's chaotic and it's very difficult to get people behind you. If you are just destroying things for destruction's own sake. The working class has to organize itself to where they have actual demands whenever they start showcasing that type of in the streets movement. If you don't have the broad majority of the working class behind you, then it will be quickly torn down by the media, the people that don't agree with you ideologically, and you'll probably lose people that even might agree with you.
And that's how you get Nixon.
Yeah.
You want Nixon, that's how you get Nixon.
And then it's also one of those things that if you had a lot of the broad majority of the left in the United States, if they knew anything about history, then they would know about just essentially the infiltration by the government, by strike-breaking organization.
Well, we have stories of pallets of bricks out there during the BLM riots. Where'd they come from?
Well, I mean, let's take it even further back than that. I believe it's in the Haymarket riot. Back in, I don't know, that was like the late 1800s. No one, I still don't think people really know who fired the first shot. I bet you it was the Pinkertons. I bet you it was the strike-breaking organization. Right. Usually it's the first group of people that start the violence are usually in with the ruling class. And that's whether they're involved in the movement. They may not knowingly, they may not be like an infiltrator per se, but if they are doing an action that will ultimately turn the public against you and have people start to divide and splinter and come up with a different strategy or whatever, they don't have to be a member of the ruling class, but they're acting as a member of the ruling class. They're doing their job for them while claiming to be on your side. And I think that that's what the left really needs to be more concerned about, is you need to be able to recognize when it is that people are acting in the interest of the ruling class. And that would be more chaotic and unruly forms of protest that turn people against you and your cause.
Well, yeah, thank you for that. And I also think, when it comes to a guy like Hassan, he's just taking his cues from his online peers, right? Like, he just assumes that, okay, because this is a riot and the police are being called in to control the riot, I have to take the side of the rioters and downplay it because that's what's expected of me in this space, right? There's no actual analysis of what's going on. You're just taking
fiery
your cues,
but peaceful.
Right. You're just kind of taking your cues from people in the space and sort of anticipating how they would react if you gave a bad take or if you said, oh, wow, they shouldn't have done that, right? That's what it seems like to me. It doesn't seem like he's really thinking about anything. It seemed like he wasn't even paying close attention. He's like eating fucking sushi or whatever the fuck he had in his mouth. And just, a minute of video played. Oh, let me just throw out a take that will be, perceived as sympathetic to these young kids. And like I said, in my take, I don't even blame the kids. They're a bunch of kids, right? That's not the point. The point is you got this worker getting beat up for no fucking reason. Right. And rather than dismissing what happened to him as, a bag of Doritos got stolen, right, and make fun of it. That's just, that's
like
a loser.
Just the optics
that's
of
a political
that. Like
loser.
this image of this poor old man who
Right.
clearly got punched in his face.
Right.
Yeah, what'd you lose? A $3 bag of Doritos and you're sitting in a multi-million-dollar house?
Yeah, right.
Come on,
how do you
man.
think
Like that is the fuel for the stereotype of the limousine liberal, of the liberal, one rule for them, another rule for everybody else. What if it happened in your neighborhood? It's fine in other people's neighborhoods. The NIMBYs, right? The Martha's Vineyard people sending everybody to an army base with their little sippy juice boxes, right? That's what that is. That's what that is. That's what gives fuel to that. And we've all experienced it, man. I remember once when I was driving a horse and carriage, I literally, you couldn't, this could have come out of a Fox News editorial page. I had an animal rights activist driving an SUV with a Massachusetts plate, get out of it with God knows how many blood diamonds on her hand, and not let me get to work in order to save the horse. Meanwhile, her whole deal was like a crime against the planet. And, but I couldn't go to work.
Right.
Well, this is also just one of those things that having someone like Hassan, and I'm not saying it's only him, there are dozens of these people that claim to be the left. Now I see Hassan being promoted constantly in my Twitter promotions. Even though I haven't watched a Hassan thing in 2 years, he'll constantly come up in my algorithm on YouTube whenever I'm trying to find something to, entertain myself. He's clearly being boosted by, these
there's gotta be
platforms.
something going on there. Yeah, indeed.
And I can't help but think I've never seen an actual communist being boosted by the algorithm. Usually they're suppressed. So if he's supposed to be representing the left, then I don't understand what the left is. It's certainly not
exactly
his viewpoint. where he's more concerned with vibes and drip and like these cultural presentations and these hot takes. Like he's so incredibly smart and so incredibly effective that he can just like sit back, chew on some fucking cud, and then come up with like the most, left-wing take of fuck that store owner. I'm sorry, what do you mean fuck that store owner? That guy was a fucking human being. Okay? He doesn't deserve to be beat on by the police or by the crowd.
Obviously.
Like his business is just as likely to be subsumed into monopoly capital as any other mom and pop shop. And why have any animosity towards the small landowners?
Well, these are the AOC boosters. I mean, this is what I mean. Like this whole faction of the left just comes off as so unserious to so many people, right? I mean, this is the DSA left. This is the Jacobin left. This is all that. They just come off as out of touch rich kids who just do this because it's what they do, right? It's their social life, right? It's their job now, right? I mean, I'll give myself a shameless plug for a meme that I made. But I made this meme today. It did pretty well. If this triggers you, but this doesn't, then you're not a leftist. Yeah, I mean, if you're more offended by this guy than you are by that, then what the fuck are you even talking about? Like, what are you like? I don't understand.
And they are.
They are.
I've seen very, very little comment on AOC's sunscreen influencer video compared to their comments on this guy's song.
Exactly.
I think it just represents a ideologically bankrupt left in the United States that ultimately does not have its priorities straight, cannot do any type of analysis to recognize where it is that you can create allyship and where it is that you can bridge divisions and stand up against the divide and conquer methods that are used by the ruling class that will try to divide the working class at every single opportunity that they have.
Please clap.